Those were my adventures in cold calling. When I was writing the book, when I was writing this chapter, actually when I was writing the book, I knew I had to talk about my adventures in cold calling, and I didn't know where it was going to fit in with the book. And then when I got to this chapter, I knew it was the right place because it talks about, I talk about, and we're going to talk about this tonight, the relationship between fear and self-recrimination. It was, as you heard in the reading, it was my rejection of myself. It was the self-recrimination that was at the heart of all the fear that I was feeling. Turned out that in almost 2 years of cold calling, nobody ever hung up on me once. As I said again in the reading, that most people were nicer to me than I was to the telemarketers who were calling me. And some of them, I think they felt bad for me. Some of them went out of their way to help me by giving me the names of their friends or other companies that I could call to pitch my services. So it was very telling. It was a very powerful experience for me. And I got to see that was the only thing, guys, the only thing that was holding me back was this self-recrimination, this self-criticism, this self-rejection, this self-hatred. And it was a self-hatred that was manifesting the fear. And, we talked about how thoughts lead to feelings, feelings lead to words and actions lead to the outcomes that we experience in life. So if I start with negative thoughts, I'm going to have negative feelings. If I have negative feelings, I'm going to speak negative words and take negative actions. And if I speak negative words and take negative actions, I'm going to have negative outcomes in my life. So what we want to do is stop the train. And sometimes it's like we don't know until after the fact. It's like often we're not aware, I'm not aware of the thought processes, and it's not always a thought. It's not always a thought like, people are not going to like me. It's also a perception. There's a perceptual process, but there's some kind of mental process that precedes the feelings, and the feelings precede the words and the actions. So sometimes I have to work backwards and say, God, so in that telephone call with the client, I sounded very negative in the way I was speaking to them. What was behind those negative words? And I thought, well, I was feeling a little insecure because I was afraid they were not happy with the work. And so that's the thought. The thought that started this whole train was like, they're not going to like me. They're not going to like my work. Something bad is going to happen here. And so the negative thought leads to the negative feeling leads to the negative words and actions, and then the negative words and actions lead to the negative outcomes. All right, so let's take a look at our first slide for tonight. For me, it's helpful. So again, my definition of fear. Fear is an emotional response to a perception of myself as powerless and or unlovable in a given situation. Now, we've talked about that definition before, but I want to back up a little bit and start by saying an emotional response. So the way the fear manifests is as an emotion. And emotion, as some of you know, emotion is energy in motion. Emotion, energy in motion. And the thing I want to say about fear is fear equals resistance. At least it does for me. Now, there may be the flight or fight response where we have a burst of energy or whatever, but what I'm talking about is kind of like chronic fear. It's kind of like situational or long-term resistance. And for me at least, that's almost always about fear. If I don't do something, or if I'm procrastinating, or if I'm putting something off, it's not because I'm lazy. It's not because, I'm a jerk or whatever. It's because I'm afraid. Either I'm not interested, it's not something I'm interested in doing or want to do or have to do for whatever, or I'm afraid to do it. So for me, fear is a paralyzing emotion. It slows me down. It keeps me from picking up the phone. When I for instance, when I started submitting my work for publication, my photos have been published in newspapers and magazines around the world, online, things like that. But for the longest time, I couldn't pick up that phone to call the newspaper. I couldn't even send the email to submit my work for shows, for exhibitions, for publication, because I was paralyzed with fear. Because what if they rejected me? What if they don't like me? What if they don't like my work? I'm going to feel ashamed. I'm going to feel bad about myself, and I don't want to feel bad about myself. So the safer route is to not do anything. The safer route is to not take that healthy risk of putting myself out there for fear of rejection. Now again, what I found this was true with the shows and exhibitions and publication, as true as it was with the cold calling. It wasn't somebody else's rejection that was the problem. The problem was me rejecting myself.